Hello, this is Dan Tomberlin. Again, let's talk about thriving in the pastorate. One of the challenges that we've got to learn to navigate in the pastorate is how to function. And one of those things is that we've got to seek optimal functioning. The problem is that most pastors are challenged with either over-functioning or under-functioning. And what we've got to do is find that happy medium, that place in the middle where we're functioning optimally so that we can serve the people of God. Let's talk about over-functioning for a moment. We're over-functioning when we're assuming more responsibility than is reasonably ours. And then all of a sudden we can't get it all done, and so what we do is we start feeling guilt and shame. A pastor can't do everything. One of the most important things a pastor can do is raise up leaders, is to find people, build a team so that you can share the responsibility. Pastors need to focus on what pastors are called to do, and they need to let the others around them do everything else. Also, we're over-functioning when we're always giving advice, when we're talking more than we're listening. We need to resist the temptation to always give advice, to always give our opinion, to always be the first one to speak. Over-functioning is enabling dysfunctional behavior. In other words, doing things for others they should be doing for themselves. I've pastored churches that expected me to be the janitor, the yard man, the electrician, the plumber. No, that's not helping a church. That church needs to understand, I needed to understand what my responsibility was. By cutting the grass, by painting the church, by doing all of those other things, I was actually enabling the dysfunctional behavior of the church. No one was learning how to become a leader. So again, we've got to learn to say yes to the things that we need to be doing, but no to the things that other people should be doing. Over-functioning is chronically worrying about everybody else, chronically worrying about other people. Let me tell you something. You can't control every situation. And if you want a life filled with anxiety, then you start worrying about everything going on around you. But if we want to live our lives in peace, we're going to have to trust God and sometimes trust the people around us. We're going to have to let these things go. Over-functioning can be feeling responsible for others or knowing what is always best for them. This is also known as helicoptering. You've seen the mom or dad who won't even teach their child how to ride a bicycle for fear that they're going to fall off the bicycle and skin their knee. Let me tell you something. The knee will heal. We need to understand that it's not our responsibility to helicopter. People will fall. People will make mistakes. That's not the issue. The issue is, can we develop leaders who know how to learn from their mistakes? Can we develop pastors who know how to learn from their mistakes? Also, over-functioning is having goals for others they don't have for themselves. I've met a lot of pastors that are going around calling people into ministry, putting a burden upon people that God has not put upon them. We need to be very, very careful. You can't ask people to move beyond their self-interest. They have to be committed to the cause. If you're imposing that call on them, imposing that responsibility on them, it's not going to be done well. One of the things that I've learned through the years is that the incommunicable attributes of God are not spiritual gifts. In other words, God knows everything, God is everywhere present, and God is all-powerful. I am not. I am not all-powerful. I can't be everywhere at the same time, and I don't know everything. And it's not God's purpose for me to know everything. Therefore, I will over-function if I act like I know everything, if I act like I can be everywhere present, if I act like I'm all-powerful. The other issue that we've got to address is what it means to under-function. Under-functioning is assuming less responsibility that is reasonably yours. And what we end up doing is blaming everyone else. One of the things I've learned about pastoral ministry, if you're naturally lazy, then pastoring can be a good job for you, because most pastors are their own supervisors. And if you're not self-motivated to get out of bed early, you'll lay in bed late. So many pastors fail because they're under-functioning. They're assuming less responsibility than they should be. They're always asking for advice rather than thinking things through independently. Now, there's wisdom in a multitude of counsel, but sometimes God gave you a brain, and God is requiring for us to think through things. We need to reject the timidity. We need to stop being risk averse, and we need to try to think these things through so that we can learn. Also under function is getting others to help when help really isn't needed. Some things are my responsibility. I don't need the help. I can do it, so I should do it. Under functioning is acting irresponsibly. And by acting irresponsibly, sometimes just doing some foolish things. Spending the money that's not yours. Taking something that's not yours. I remember for the first 10 or 12 years that my kids lived in the house, I remember one day they came to me and said, "Daddy, you sure make a lot of money." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Daddy, they take up an offering in church every week to give to you." And when I explained to my sons that that was not my money, that was the church's money, that I got a weekly salary, they were shocked. But the truth is, too many times pastors act like the church is their property and the church's money is their money. They're acting irresponsibly. They're not being good stewards. Sometimes we underfunction if we don't have long-term goals. We tend just to coast, or we depend upon spontaneity. And as Pentecostals, we believe in the leadership of the Holy Spirit. Well, the thing is that the Holy Spirit can lead us a year out. The Holy Spirit can give us insight as to where we're going. So we need to develop some long-term goals after praying and discerning the move of the Spirit. And then we've got to follow through with vision and strategy. One of the things that I've noticed is many pastors are good about talking about vision. They're just not good about follow through. If we want to function optimally, then we've got to follow through with the vision that God has given us. The Apostle Paul wrote to Timothy in 2 Timothy 1:7, "For God has not given us a spirit of timidity, but of power, love, and discipline." If we want to function at our optimal best, we've got to move in the spirit of power, love, and discipline. And we've got to resist the timidity and the anxieties that challenge us in ministry. And finally, we've got to develop a plan of self-care. Most pastors I know don't do this well, but this is vitally important. Number one, play. Throw the baseball with your kids. Go play some basketball. Go fishing. Play. Have moments where you can just enjoy life. Number two, rest. Observe a Sabbath. Sunday is not the Sabbath for pastors. You've got to have a day that you can put on a pair of shorts, a t-shirt, and a ball cap and disappear. Not be the pastor for that day. Observe a Sabbath. The other thing I would suggest is designate an on-call pastor. This is something I learned to do decades ago. When I knew that I was going to be away for a few days with my family, I would ask a local pastor if he would mind serving as the on-call pastor. In one community I served, there were two pastors. One was the pastor of the Christian and Missionary Alliance Church, and the other was the pastor of First Baptist Church. And all three of us developed a relationship where we served as on-call pastors for their congregations when they needed to be out of town. And so when I would be out of town, I would post in the church bulletin, "I'll be out of town for the next 4 days. If you have an emergency need, call pastor at First Baptist Church, or call the pastor at Christian Missionary Alliance Church." This works well. This works well. Designate an on-call pastor. Look, when medical doctors go golfing, when they go out of town, what do? They have a colleague who is on call to cover for them. Pastors need to develop the same kind of strategy. Also, we need to take sabbaticals. When I came to Pentecostal Theological Seminary after 37 years of pastoring, I planned a 3-month sabbatical. I had saved some money, and the church that I was pastoring at the time gave me a month's pay, so I took a 3-month sabbatical. I never realized how tired I was, how anxious I was, how sick I was until I took that sabbatical. We need to step away. A lot of pastors think their church won't survive if they leave. The question is not, will the church survive? Yes, the church will survive. The question is, will you survive? And then finally, plan retirement. For the first 15 years I pastored, I was a bivocational pastor, and I was broke. I've never made a lot of money. You don't come into pastoral ministry because you're planning to make a lot of money. I started planning for retirement late, which meant I really had to struggle, and I've really had to work hard the last 15 or 20 years in planning retirement. But I don't want to be broke when I'm old. And so we need to plan early. We need to plan regularly, but plan retirement. Make those contributions and donations vacations, make sure you're planning for that time when you will need help in your retirement. God bless you.